Vinaka family, Vinaka here, village to the world. Apologies on the late upload on this one. I was just in the middle of moving places to a new spot. Finally got all the gear set up to get cracking with the editing of the podcast, and some videos going to be dropping later. But yeah, thank you for your patience. Waisale Iowane, CFO of Freebird Institute, Chief Financial Officer. It was good to have him drop in, share a bit about his job and how he as a Fijian in his role with a foreign Japanese company, and some of the tough stuff he's going through, and some of the stereotypes that he had to face, and he's breaking barriers for our people. And it's good. We had a good chat. Talked about some bad spending habits, good saving habits, and I feel like it's going to be something good for our people and something that we can really learn from. And yeah, hope you guys enjoy this one. Again, Vinaka for the support, all the new followers, welcome, and thank you for everybody that subscribed to our channel as well. Vinaka family, hope you guys enjoy this one.
I'm proud of 679. From my land I would die, and you know I don't lie.
What up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Village to the World. Yeah. It's your boy Billy Q here, and you got Pastor P on the other side, and I would like to welcome a special guest today, Waisale Iowane.
Hey, Bulla boys.
Yeah!
Yo. Wow. Straight into it, man.
Wait, not nervous or anything, huh?
Nah, just trying to follow memes.
You're not here to play games.
Nope, definitely not. It's a tough act to follow, you know.
Oh man,
Gotta keep it up. Shout out to memes.
We love your memes. Wherever you are.
Next to the tequila bottle, maybe.
Whoa. Oh.
Literally.
How's things, bro?
Good, man. How are you guys?
Yeah, good, bro. For those guys who are at home who are not familiar with you, where you from, your name, village, school, high school, primary school. Introduce yourself, let it be known.
All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Waisale Iowane. I'm from Nailambau in Te Levu, and share maternal links to Iowane in Vanombalava in Lau. I think my sister messaged me and was like, make sure you get the Iowane Vanombalava Lau right, you know? So I had to get that right, because I messaged her 2 weeks ago. Just last week, I was sitting down at home and I messaged her and I was like, hey, where's mom from again? Like, I keep forgetting the name of the village. She goes like, oh, you're ashamed. Yeah, but yeah, thanks for having me, boys. It's great to be here. Great timing too, I guess.
No, yeah, it's good. It's good to have you here. Waisale, thank you for accepting the invitation to jump on and share a bit of what you've been up to and the things you're doing. Yeah, just gonna kick it off, and for those guys who don't know, Wais's background is in finance, accounting. You hold a degree in what is that? What do you hold? Explain.
So I've got a bachelor's degree in commerce with double majors in accounting and banking. I got that.
Drop all the microphones.
I got my degree at the University of the South Pacific in Fiji, so USP in Fiji. Shout out to all those that came through USP. That's where I met Billy over here.
Thanks.
Oh, man.
All the good times back then, I guess.
Missing classes.
Big time, man. Never showing up.
I was studying at home.
Yeah, but I did 3 years at USP with accounting. You know, it's something that I guess in Fiji as well, it's a field that's rarely taken up by the indigenous
It's true.
Fijians and us Itokays. You know, it's I think when growing up, I think when people ask you or your parents ask you, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? You know, it's a typical answer. You're saying you're a doctor, you're a lawyer, you're a teacher, and all those, and never an accountant. You know, I think even for myself, like, I didn't even think that I was going to be an accountant. I
Well,
was never something that I imagined to become, but that's what I am now. So I basically, specialize in areas in financial reporting and basically statutory reporting, taxation and things like that in finance. Yeah.
No, since you've graduated and that you've held a couple of jobs and stuff like that, then obviously now you're the CFO or Chief Financial Officer for those guys that they don't get the lingo.
Just a little one. Yeah, I mean, ever since graduating, I joined accounting firms back in Fiji. It was BDO back then, Ali Specific, and I think it's called PKF. And then I joined KPMG. And these are big global firms. And I think it was a milestone achievement. I think when I started off my career as well, like in finance, anyone that studied accounting, you start off at the bottom level, right? Like as anyone else would. You start off as a graduate accountant, and then you slowly move up the ranks as the years go by. You gain your experience, and then you sort of try and then reassess your life, or reassess like, what do I do now? Where to from here? And I think I was fortunate in the sense that I surrounded myself with a lot of other people that shared the same values as I did back in uni. And these are people that I didn't even go to school with, people that you just meet in uni. And I think that's one of the experiences to me, or life-changing experiences, because you meet these people and they become your lifelong friends, and they are still now. And so basically after joining the accounting firms, I figured that perhaps that wasn't for me. I think anyone that's in the accounting profession as well, they'd know how tough it was, the tough life. It wasn't 9 to 5. It was like 9 to midnight or 8 to midnight. Countless nights, literally long hours. But I wouldn't change it for the world. I think that experience that it gave me was sort of preparing me to basically, for a better role in the future. And then I had a short stint with Fiji Airways. I actually became their first tax analyst.
The first
tax analyst. Yeah, they've never had any tax analyst in-house. And so
it was done out-house, or like someone else?
Yeah, so it was always given out to the accounting firms who did all their tax works and all of those things. And I think as part of their restructure, they wanted someone in-house, someone that could do the work for them. And so I got the role for the tax analyst. And I think when I walked into Fiji Airways, there's about 70 odd staff, right? And then I was the only Itoke guy walking in.
To go for that interview?
No, to actually start work. Like when I started work. Like, I mean, like obviously past the interview and stuff. Like when you're walking in and you're like, oh, yo, this is crazy because...
Is that for like the finance side of things?
Yeah, because I think the stereotype in Fiji is that it's always our Indo-Fijian brothers and sisters that dominate that field in Fiji.
Yeah.
I always wanted to break that stereotype and say we can just be as good as them. But why haven't we? And those were the questions that I started to ask myself. Like, we have the same qualification. We go through the same schooling system. Why are then we lacking in progress than them? And so I think Fiji Airways was a great exposure. I only stayed there for a short while, and I also joined. But prior to me joining, there were 2 Itoke women that were there as well, one of which who is now the CFO. I think you know the other one is Asinada.
Oh, shout out to Asinada.
Yeah, in the Marshall Islands. She's now in the Marshall Islands, big CFO as well. So it's pretty good. And then after Fiji Airways, the chairman and CEO of the current company that I work for, he sent me an email and said like, hey, can we have lunch? And I was like, okay, I want to see what this guy has to say. And then he sits down and the first thing he tells me was, I want you to join the company. And I was like, okay, what do you want me to do? And he's like, I want you to publicly list the company. I need you to take the company public. I was sitting there scratching my head and I was like, okay. And he's like, but I need you to do it in a year. And I was like, is this guy crazy?
What's wrong with doing a year?
Anyone that knows business, it's pretty hard to list a company in that short amount of time. That too in Fiji, taking into account Fiji time. So I was thinking to my head, man, whatever he's on, I need to be on it as well. Like, this guy's pretty crazy. But then I told him, okay, let me go back home. I need to think about this. And I went home and I was thinking to myself, I spoke to a couple of my friends, a couple of people, and I was like, okay, like, you know, if this is the path that I need to take and this is the challenge that I need to accept, right? And him being Japanese as well.
Oh,
That's on a whole another level.
Because that's the Japanese company, Freebird, is it?
Yeah, so that's the company that I currently work for, Freebird Institute. And so I had to go back home and rethink, like, okay, maybe, you know what, maybe I can do it. Because I went back and looked at history of how people were taking companies public. It's a lengthy process and quite an expensive one too.
Yeah.
And so I thought to myself, well, you know what, because I was 26 at that time, and I was like, you know what, I'll take this on as a challenge. Because usually a lot of people that, if you were to take a company public, you'd have to have at least 10 or 15 years of work experience to be able to know what to do, right? I mean, the laws and X are there, but then you don't just suddenly come up and say like, okay, yep, I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
But I thought to myself, like, you know what?
Mate.
I should be able to do it. Yeah, mate, you know, bring it on. Like, I'm going to do this. So
In 1 year.
in 1 year. In 1 year too. And
So that was his job proposal. I want you to take my pop.
that was it. That was the start. And I never looked back. But now that I look back as well, and I think it's all about timing as well. And I think that's what Mems had mentioned earlier too. Like, you get a lot of no's every time, and you don't get picked. But sometimes when you get that opportunity, for me, I was thinking at that time, like, okay, there's this opportunity. You know, anyone, this could have gone to anyone else, but if it's giving it to me, I need to make use of the opportunity. And I think that's what a lot of people need to do these days as well. It's not just about taking on the opportunity, it's about making use of it.
Yep.
You know?
Wow.
Because you've got one foot through the door, you know, you now need to differentiate yourself so that you stay, you know? And that for me was probably the catapult in my career, because ever since that happened, like post 12 months, you know, I managed to get all the certain approvals from whatever for to list the company. And, you know, and I think one of the main things that I always share with people on my challenges during that process was managing the expectation. Here you have Japanese investors trying to list a company in Fiji, in the business environment in Fiji, and also managing that expectation to say like, oh, if this certain stakeholder says like, oh, we'll give it to you in like 2 weeks, you tell it to a Japanese, they'll expect you in that 2 weeks, you know. So you can't.
No Fiji time with them.
No Fiji time. There's no way. It carries no track at all. And that's some of the challenges that I had to face. And I think it's always about building your relationships as well with various stakeholders in Fiji. And I think as part of the process of listing as well, you have to liaise with authorities like the Reserve Bank of Fiji, the South Pacific Stock Exchange, and these institutes like the Investment Fiji and the Tax Department, all these levels, you know. And you have to keep meeting with them and showing them the level of expectation that you have as an aspiring company to list or to go public, and what the expectations of the investors are versus how these guys are going to meet that expectation. So I think for me, every time was, if they told me like, oh, we'll give you 2 weeks, I would tell the Japanese investors, 3 weeks or 4 weeks. I'd add on weeks just so that because I know for a fact that, you know, obviously in Fiji, no offense to anyone, but it's always the case, like it'll always be the Fiji time. Doesn't matter where, there's always going to be there. And they'll come up with all these excuses. So I think that way I sort of managed to, you know, not have the investors in Japan sort of lose hope in Fiji. Because I think Fiji is a great place to invest in. So having that in mind, I just made sure that you work smarter. Because I think a lot of the times now, you know, I'm not about working harder now. I'm about working smarter. And also, if there are ways around how you can manage those expectations, you take it. Yeah. And that's basically what I did. Yeah.
Yeah, because like you're right, like with what you said with the 2 weeks, and then you telling the Japanese followers 3 weeks, because that Fiji time thing, I don't think that will ever disappear. And it's just sort of like, all right, this is what we've got. We're just gonna manage it.
We started recording today on Fiji time.
Oh yeah, definitely.
That will never go.
Yeah, that's right.
No, man. But how is it though? Like working, like, what have you learned from working with such a company that's like a Japanese company? Like you growing up in Lataka as growing up in Lataka and going to school around the area, and then all of a sudden you're working for this overseas big Japanese company. Like, of course, there's things you're gonna learn from there. Did you have to learn Japanese?
No, thank God. I didn't have to learn Japanese. I think one of the craziest experiences that I take home every time that I work with the Japanese is sort of their work ethics, right? Anyone that's ever come or crossed paths with Japanese or worked with them at some level would know that these guys are hard workers, definitely hard workers, and they show up on time and they're committed. They set goals for themselves, which they intend to meet, unlike us, we're like, yeah, I'll do it tomorrow, but tomorrow never comes, right? So, and another thing that I sort of took on a personal note was how they were with managing money. And I think this is a topic that a lot of people sort of try to stay away from, clearly because we know ourselves, right? We know ourselves better, and we're not good in that area in terms of money, in terms of savings. And I think that's one thing that I've seen with them. But I think for them is like, the more money you make will always, would mean like you get to save more money. Whereas with us Fijians and Pacific Islanders, it's always the more money you make, the more money you get to spend, and that's
more shoes we can buy.
Exactly. And that's something that I've noticed. No matter how much we pay them more, you'll see their lifestyle not change. It'll always be the same. They never do that. Unlike with us, it's like, okay, yep, I think I can buy a coffee every day now for the rest of the week. But I think that's a mindset that...
One day rich, guy.
One day rich, exactly. One day rich. As soon as you get paid, everyone's gone out of the office. Gone out for lunch, and then the next day, everyone's there eating noodles and biscuit. But yeah, I think it's something that we Fijians or Pacific Islanders, I think we need to work on in terms of finances, investments. I'm not sure if either of you had seen, there's a video on Facebook that was posted by Penny and the husband. Yeah, which I think
they saved like 60,000 in 2 years.
60,000, yeah, which is really great. And I think there needs to be more videos of that circulating, because a lot of people are thinking like, oh, you can't do it because I don't earn as much. But that's the thing. Like, I think from experience, it's not about how much you earn, and they mentioned that as well. It's not about how much you earn, it's about how much you can save from what you earn. And I think that's something that I always talk about with my family. I'm very passionate to talk about savings and things like that, and even my friends, in my circle of friends. And I think we need to get out of that mindset that, because our culture or our lot too demands of it, a lot of our time and money. But
don't get me started.
Stop it.
Yeah, that's that's something that I feel passionate about talking about. How every time everyone's like, "Oh, I've got no money. I was like, "Well,
you did.
What are you doing? What are you doing?" And everyone that like, they have good jobs, right? They have jobs, or they have something to do. They're earning the dough. It's just how they're spending it. And I think just last night I was talking to my sister. So shout out to my sister, my younger sister. Yeah, and
much love, sis.
Much love, sis. Hope your legs are right.
Yeah, she had a Liz Frank injury, but we're talking about how much, because they were in Sydney over the last for the last month, and then. She was like, "Oh, yo, I've just looked at my bank account. I don't want to look at it again. I was just trying to analyze my expenses." So me and her had a heart-to-heart conversation, because I told her as well, if you look at how much money you're spending, we can actually see how much money we can try to save. But that's sort of the conversations that I have with my sister, and I think that we as Fijians and as Pacific Islanders need to talk about that more. We need to start talking about, how much money can we save, or how can we save this for? I think that's some of the topics that's off the table at home. That's something that's new, Otherwise, you're talking about, say,
Tambu.
Yeah, Tambu, say, it's literally...
Money is the root of all evil. Don't talk about it.
That's the conversation that we have. But then everyone still wants to make money, right? And still wants to have more money. Yeah, and I think it starts off with the little things. And I like that video that Peniette and the husband put up. You're talking about the lifestyle in Fiji. Like, everyone's always trying to compete, right?
It's true.
Everyone's looking at this like, yeah, let me see what I'm going to do next week. I know all these posts that they put up on Facebook, like, yeah, I get it. And I think a lot of, when people get together as well, like even if they're drinking grog, sitting down, I think there needs to be more conversations that they need to have with their friends and their family and talk about, like, what do you think about this investment? How can we save? But these sound very, like, these are topics that are very foreign in Fijian families and things like that. Because the moment you bring it up, and every time I talk about that with some of my family back in Fiji, they're like, so, Sarotamanda, like, and
Stop talking work. Hey, how's everyone's finance? Whoa.
How much you saving? No.
Call me back next week. Call me back next week.
Call me when I get paid.
Live life. I live life.
One day at a time.
They'll go YOLO. Send my YOLO.
YOLO with the magic noodles.
Yeah, but
You're right. We need to have that conversation, huh? Like, especially they said with grog or cover sessions, or when we're having meals together. We talk about, sometimes we talk about some very useful things and some very, very useless.
Oh, a lot of useless things.
A
lot of useless things.
Yeah. But when you flick money into that, everybody's like, you don't talk about money.
So money face.
Exactly.
But you're right, you need to be like, sort of, I think,
Proactive, yeah.
But first you gotta know what you're talking about too.
Well, see, that's the thing. And I think, before this conversation as well, we were talking about how we're afraid to ask for things we don't know about. Like, because if you ask, you'll be like, look over there.
Yeah.
But then, like, yeah. Exactly. But that's the thing. Like, we need to be talking about uncomfortable conversations, right? And I think we need to start calling each other out. And I think you need to start calling yourself out first before you can call other people out. Because I was talking to my sister and I was telling her, like, I've just been spending too much money. I think when you realize that, you have spent on unnecessary things, you're able to then call yourself out and then realize, like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. Like, this is the direction that I'm going to take. And a lot of people always say, like, yeah, you're right. Like, money is the root of all evil, but money buys good things too, and it takes you places. And I say that because that's how it's taken me to places. I've been able to travel the world. And that's something that I found passionate about besides, like, counting the beans or crunching numbers every time. Yeah, but then, and that's some experience that I probably will never get anywhere else, right? A lot of people always say, like, oh, he's traveling because he's got a lot of money or all that. It's like, no, that's not it. Like, you need to first work hard for your money, and then you need to save. I think a lot of people, as soon as you want to start a conversation, and they were like, "Oh, what's a good investment? What's a good investment?" And I'm like, "Okay, bro, before we talk about that, let's dial it back. Let's talk about savings first. Let's talk about savings."
No. I need the investment to
How do I be rich tomorrow?
Yeah, exactly. No one wants to look at, or no one wants to go through that process. I was like, well, unless you want, go try and buy a lottery ticket and pray that you win $1 million or more. But otherwise, like, it's hard work, and it takes a lot of sacrifices and commitment. Something that I think for us, we're always very laid back because we're like, don't worry about tomorrow. Don't worry about tomorrow. It's always the same response. But I think, like, if we change that mindset and say, like, okay, no, we have to worry about tomorrow. And we need to start thinking about our future. And for those that have family, they think about their kids and things like that. And so they need to start thinking about savings and then start thinking about investments. Because there's a lot of investment opportunities that, for us Fijians and Pacific Islanders just haven't touched about. We just haven't talked about it. So, and I don't know if you guys, there was another post as well that I've read on Facebook from this gentleman called Pio Tambaiwalu. Like, this guy's he's mad with his investments in Fiji. He's just a regular bloke that's investing in a lot of things, in properties and in shares back in Fiji. And those are things that, for us as Fijians, if someone says, like, oh, let's talk about shares, everyone's like, oh, what's that? yo, what are you talking about? Like, you're
Yeah.
talking gibberish right now.
Mm.
But that's something that we can all help each other out with, and I keep telling that to my family as well. Like, if you guys want investment advice, and disclaimer, I'm not a licensed investment advisor, but to my
But we
family,
are.
to my family,
But we are.
to my family, I'm that free advisor that needs to give them all the checks and balances. But yeah, like, and I encourage them. I tell them, like, look, you need to start. If you want to talk about investments, I'm here to help you. I can give you some guidance. And I think that's the sort of conversation that you need to start talking about with people, because, yeah, you can be making so much money, but yeah, at the same time, you may not be saving as much money as you hope you do. Because I think a lot of people keep scratching their head and going like, man, I keep getting a pay rise, but where's my money going? Where's my money going? Like, I just see a paycheck today and then I have to wait for the next paycheck again the next time. So that's and again, it's all with the mindset. It's all with the changing of the mindset of people in Fiji. And I guess it's not Fiji, Pacific, everywhere as well.
I mean, like, you can be earning 120k and someone can be earning 60k, and the person with 60k will be saving a lot more.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And 120 is just splurging his money.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just like come to your mindset and your spending habits. It's not about how much you make, but sort of like how much you spend.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, like, I think that's a good thing. Right? I mean, like, for now, like, from the outside looking in, or like as Fijians, what do you see is like one of our bad habits where all our money sort of goes towards you? Do you think it's just because of our Fijian culture where, so and so has passed away? I'm not saying anything bad against our own thing, but when it comes to those kind of things, it's like more like a competition. Who's gonna give more? It's all for show.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I'm not saying it's a bad thing as well. Like, I think it's just the mindset that needs to change. I mean, yeah, you can give, for the lotu, the vanua, and things like that, but you must try and save yourself first before you want to try and save others, right? And I think you need to save yourself financially first, and you need to be true to yourself. A lot of people say like, oh yeah, that's okay, I'll live it, I can do without this. But then they come back, they struggle the following week, and I think and a lot of us just give an excuse of that's our culture. They make that the reason why they can't progress or they can't save. They'll be like, because this is what's happening. But if you strip back, you'd be like, no, that's just you and your bad habits of spending that you aren't able to save. Because if you discipline yourself financially, like, oh man, like it's a whole new level. And I guess for me, like I've read a lot of books. There's this book called Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki.
Yeah, I love that.
Like, that book is like, oh man, that book is life changing, because it talks about all these things and from a different perspective as well. And what I'm saying is a lot of people define success or try and define success based on someone else's success. You shouldn't do that. Like, a lot of people compare, right? Oh, that guy's got a new car, I want to get a better one. Or that guy's got that sort of shoes, I want to get a better one. But I think if you set your own goals and your own success and define your own success in that way, then you tick off the goals that you're wanting to achieve instead of trying to see what the other person is doing. And that's something that's very big in Fiji. And like you said, like, even in the solis, someone giving like $100, okay, I'll give $150.
And the thing about you saying about the cars, like, I think like cars and other things like that, like, big ups to you if you can afford a mad car. But like, it's just I think it's just the educational side of things where, like, do you know what you're paying for? Like, you're buying a 4-wheel drive. Like, no, I'm not knocking anyone that wants to put money into buying a mad 4-wheel drive, and then the moment you drive that car off the lot, the value just drops.
Yeah.
But you are locked in at that price or whatever you paid in, and then in 5 years that value has dropped, but you're still paying for whatever they've got locked you in. And that's just, I think, just little things like that where sometimes your ego can like take charge, and then you pay for it in the back end,
I mean, and I'm guilty of that as well. Like, I did that big time. I mean, like, you remember my blue car? Like, I went in, like, I think it was 2 years ago, and I went and bought in a brand new car just because I thought, like, okay, I think I deserve a nice car. I deserve a nice car. And I went and bought in a brand new car, which sat at home 80% of the time. Because one, I was hardly in the country, and two, the company provided me a car.
So he already had a car and he went and bought another car.
I went and bought another car. So, and then after 2 years, I was like, what am I doing? Like, this is crazy. And I went and sold it off. I just went like, this is just unnecessary expense that I don't need. So I literally chucked the car out. And mind you, after 2 years, the mileage was like less than 20K.
Oh,
That's just how much I drove the car. And I hardly did.
Just drove to Ed's and back.
Was that?
Kila Vinaka.
Oh, man, that place. Yeah, but look, I think for us as Fijians, everyone needs to uplift each other. Like people need to lift each other up and celebrate their successes. A lot of people, as Mimsy had mentioned, like, man, they only want to ride the bandwagon when they see you succeed. Like, no one wants to be there for you when you fail. But they don't see how many failures you've had to go through for that success, right? Everyone just wants to see that success.
Yep.
They don't care about the process. They don't care about your journey. They just want to see you succeed. And that's the thing as well. And when they do, people will praise you. They jump on the bandwagon. But then then there's always that one person that will find the fault. I'll be like, so look at that. That thing is crooked. That thing's not supposed to be there. That thing's not supposed to be set up that way. Like, oh man, I think that's why I think a lot of the Fijians or the Pacific Islanders are like scared to put themselves out there. They're like, oh nah, they're worried about copying all this backlash and all these trolls on social media. They have nothing better to do. But I guess everyone just needs to celebrate the success. And kudos to you boys as well for starting off this podcast. I mean, I think it's great, and it's something that you guys are passionate about, and that's good. And there needs to be more people like promoting it. Like if we see it, we'd be like, let's like it, let's share it. It doesn't even cost anything. Right?
You just get your Japanese guys to jump on and share in Japanese.
Don't worry. I'll put in the words in Japanese. But yeah, man.
What else have you sort of like picked up from your Japanese counterparts? Like, because you go back and forth to Japan.
Yeah.
To go meet up. What do you go do when you go meet up with those guys?
So my trips to Japan are usually, so because of my role, I usually have senior management meetings with the GMs in Japan. Like our
so you have to go there.
Yeah.
You can't just can't video call them.
Well, sometimes things are better on a whiteboard,
Really?
And also, look, the time difference as well is just crazy. But I think we check off more boxes. I'm very traditional in that sense. I like to have face-to-face meetings and over the computer, Zoom meetings and Skype. So I meet with the GMs and the managers out in Japan so that we can strategize our way forward in the next financial year for us. And those trips in Japan for me is always like, I think when I first went there, when I was 26, going to Japan for the first time, I was like, oh, this place is pretty sick. It's pretty dope. And then when I walked into the room, everyone's looking at me like, is that you? I was like, yeah, why? They're like, oh, we just assumed you were much older. Yeah, because the perception is like, if you're a chief financial officer for a business, if you're much older, like these are positions that you probably feel like when you're 35, 40.
Yeah.
And for a Japanese company as well, because my predecessor was Japanese, and he was like, I think it was 65 or almost 70. So they obviously automatically thought that, so the next person is obviously going to be that same sort of caliber, sort of age. Yeah. So then I walked in, I was like, oh, how's it going? And I was like, oh.
Where are you? Where you going to take out the trash?
Like,
where's your father?
Are you in the right office?
Is your dad coming?
Yeah, exactly. But and it's like, yeah, that's me. And they were like, oh, okay. And then, then they start to think like, wait, he's young. Like, what does he know? Yeah. So that when you start having those meetings and then you start pitching to them, they'll be like, okay, hang on now. Okay, he's onto something here. Yeah. And that's just sort of the stereotype, because the other thing was, I think because the Japanese have also had experience in Fiji over the past, the stereotype is always like, oh, the Fijians are lazy. They can't do the work. They come to work. They don't come to work on time and all these things, But I was determined to break that stereotype. I had to change their mindset, because as soon as I started explaining things to them and they saw my work ethic and how I was working, they're like, man, are you sure you don't have Japanese in your blood? Are you not Japanese? And I was like, why? They're like, because you work like a Japanese. And I was like, nah, correction. I work like a Fijian.
Yeah.
Like, that's different. Like you just exactly right.
I work like a
Maybe-
Fijian.
This is exactly how Fijians work as well. Like, you just can't discount us based on your past experiences, and that's what I wanted to show the Japanese investors, that you can trust Fijians to do the work as well. And that was before I even took the company listed. Before I even listed the company. And I think even that journey going through, like, there was so much, bureaucracy that I had to deal with, and a lot of high expectations as well from the investors. They were, and mind you, at the same time as well, I think I was almost going crazy, because, and what I did was in between that 1 year, I tried to take short trips to here and there, just to keep my sanity, like, because it was pretty demanding. Some of the expectations that were coming back and some of the feedback, and it was like, oh man, because sometimes they were like, I don't think you guys are ready. When you get this sort of feedback, you're like, wait, why are you saying that? And for me, it was always then just try to get determined to be like, nah, we're ready. We're going to show you we're ready. And that's exactly what I did. And I think in 2018, because I listed the company in 18 months, I got picked up for an award in Fiji. It was for Fiji's young accountant of the year.
Number one.
And I was like, oh, wow, okay. Like, at that time, you're trying to think to yourself, like, oh, did I deserve this? But then, and then everyone's like, no, you know what? You've done, this is pretty historic. Like, what you guys did, because I listed the first foreign company in Fiji. There was never any foreign company to be listed on a stock exchange there. And we were the first foreign company.
Wow.
So there was a lot of things to go around. And it was pretty... then I sit back and I was like,
you pretty much pioneered a foreign company been listed in Fiji.
Yeah, in Fiji, yeah. And that too, because Fiji was going through a phase as well. They were transitioning the act with the Fiji's Companies Act. And they had new requirements coming in. And so we were the first company to be listed under the new Companies Act as well. So that for us as well, like, that was pretty good, because they were saying, like, you as soon as we released the Companies Act, you guys had to literally change your requirements and all your compliances to meet this new standard. And that's basically how we did. We just had to go back and say, like, we can't do much. This is the law. This is what we have to do. And I think it was at that point that continuously just drew a lot of attention to our business and to me as well in my role. Like, I've never seen a lot of people kept saying, like, oh, you're such an inspiration. You're such an inspiration. And you're like, oh, really? And that's what you hope to achieve as well. The money. Not there yet. But, and that's what I hope to achieve, or this, for this podcast to achieve as well. If you can inspire one person out there, that's watching or that's listening, like, that's the goal, because you never know whose life you might change. And you never know some of the things you say, people will relate to that. People relate to your stories, and that's how it is. And in that same year, I think 2018 and 2019 was a pretty big year, because later on in that year as well, like, they and then the stock exchange had their awards, and we literally got because you're a public company, there's a lot of requirements in terms of disclosures out to the public, and there's things like annual report that we needs to be produced on an annual basis. And just on our first year of listing, we took out an award on our annual report, and we were like, yo, like, we're in business, man. So everyone was
Japanese
like,
in town.
Everyone's like, how does this new company come in and just scoop up these awards? And then when they had done all the awards, and at the end they had actually a surprise award, and then it was a Enterprising Achiever of the Year award, and then they gave me that award, and I was just like, what? I was literally eating my ice cream, and they said my name, and I was like, what? What's going on? But to me, I was just like, this role and this opportunity, and that's what I'm talking about, making use of the opportunity, right? I made use of that opportunity and just let your work speak for itself. And I think that's important. Like, a lot of people, they get in committed and expect something in return, right? But that's literally what's basically expected of you, is to, put in your commitment, put in your whole heart and everything in whatever you do, basically. And after that award, I think one of the biggest milestone and highlights of my career was getting picked up by Australia's business magazine. It's one of the largest Australia's business magazine. It's called In the Black by CP Australia.
Wow.
And they were, and I didn't know it, so they were in Fiji at that time. And then when they saw and they heard the story, they're like, "Oh, yo, we need to feature you in our magazine." I was just like, "Wait, what?" They're like, "Yeah, would you be interested?" And I was like, "You're joking? Like, what do you mean?" Because anyone that does accounting and has read these magazines like this, they profile all these big people, and I'm like, "Yo, I don't even think my achievement's that big, man. Like, are you crazy?" And he's like, no, I'm being serious. Like, it's really good to try and profile an indigenous Fijian being an accountant in this profession.
Yeah.
And I feel like we need to get you profiled. So months go by, and then they come back, and there's like, and I never hear back from them. I was like, oh man, that sucks.
Yeah.
I just got my hopes up.
I know. I
What
was
a
like, I knew it. And then next minute, like, I get an email to say like, oh, just touching base with you again. We're still interested in all this stuff. And I was just like, oh man. And then we did the whole interview and everything, and it got published in 2019. It was the April issue last year. I always remember it, like, because everyone was just like all over the world. So Fijians or people in finance and accounting all over the world that saw the magazine. It's distributed to over 120 countries, I think.
Wow.
And so when it came out, and I was just like, yo, that's my profile in that magazine, like, and that's for so many people to read. And a lot of people sent me so many messages on LinkedIn and things like that, like just congratulating me. And I was just like, oh shit, okay, that's me. But and people were like, this is something that my son wants to hear. Or, that nothing is impossible for them, because the people that I see getting profiled in these magazines are all these top-notch people from Qantas, ANZ, and like, and there's me from Fiji, like, and I'm like, okay, we can do this. And that's the thing. Like, I think when you can aspire to, do whatever you want. You set your heart, and you just let your work speak for itself, and it'll get the recognition it deserves in the right time. And I think that's the thing as well. A lot of people, as soon as they get knocked down, they're like, yep, no, on to the next one, as Mems has said. But it's about continuously, keeping that drive and keeping yourself challenged, and then just working hard, because then the rewards will just come in the right time. Yeah.
No, it's good, because I remember that time that that magazine came out, because I also shared on Facebook, and like everybody was proud of you, because everybody, like, because us known each other from Fiji, like, it's like, bro, that's like one of the boys. Like, it's just like when one of the boys crack at first grade, or one of the boys cracking in the sport. Like, when you seen this guy's face there, I was like, oh, damn, man. But the thing that I got out from you sharing that was the fact that how the Japanese fellows in that company had bad experiences before, and then you stepped in and sort of like, you know what, I want to change King's view of how they view us Fijians. And yeah, I think it's looking good, bro. Like, it's hectic. You're doing a good job.
Bro, that's awesome, man.
But away from the counting and the numbers,
The boring stuff.
No.
all that, traveling.
You're loving the outdoors.
Oh man, I don't like staying in one country for an extended period of time. Like, I don't know. I think they call it the travel bug. I caught it pretty bad.
Yeah.
Really bad. Like, now it's a quarantine. It's like, oh man, when's the borders gonna open? But yeah.
Like you said, like the countries you went to, you did a couple of backpacking, and why? What's so good about travel that you sort of like fell in love with it?
Well, I think for me, traveling had a huge impact for me, because it opened up my eyes to a lot of things, and it also got me to understand the differences in people, the differences in culture, and basically understanding that, you know, even though we're different in so many ways, there's so much similarities between people from across the world. Like, you realize that when you talk to people, they face the same challenges as you do. They go through the same problems. They have the same goals and aspirations. And that's something to me, and it's like, wow, halfway across the world, and, you know, we can relate to a lot of things. And I think one of my weirdest encounters was, like, I was in Cusco in Peru. We went out for lunch, and I got served the tapioca. And they gave it with they gave it to me, and I was like, as soon as I looked at it, and I was like, yo, that's tapioca. And then I was like, what's this? And they're like, oh, so that's like potatoes. That's like potatoes. And it's like, oh yeah, not for where I'm from. But they ate it as a staple food as well, which is so. And I was like, wow, halfway across the world, but it's just so different. You know, but that's what I'm saying. Like, you know, a lot of people that have never traveled or have never experienced it, they're in a shell, right? You need to open your eyes out to what's out there. The world's a much bigger place, you know, and otherwise you just you don't have an open mind about a lot of things, and that'll translate into your work. And for me as well, like, even at work, like, you need to be very open-minded, because you work with people, you know, from different age groups, and then different backgrounds, you know, and then everyone's always trying to reach for the same goal, right? And then trying to put each other down and things like that. So you have to try and keep this balance. So you have to be really, really open-minded about some of the things that you will hear. And I think for me, being in management position, like, you hear about all these things that come up in terms of HR and things like that in the business, and then you wonder, like, man, like, sometimes, like, we just need to change, you know. It's just things that belittle other people, you know. And I think I'm like, there's never a report that comes in that, you know, this person is uplifting this person is doing that. And I think that's what we need to do as well. So I think in traveling, once you get to understand that there's so much differences and accept that there are differences, then you're able to then work with people and accept that, you know. And then you're able to say, like, okay, this is how we're going to do things, just to accept that there's differences.
So in a way, like, you're traveling sort of like, one, it's balancing out all the work that you've been doing, but it's the life lesson is that there's going to be challenges and obstacles along the way, and, you know, language barriers and all that. And so you take those life lessons and sort of implement it in work as well. Does it help?
Pretty much. And I think another thing as well is that you take out of traveling is that you learn to be grateful. You know, when you travel to, and I mean, Fiji is a developing country, right? And you think that, oh, it's pretty bad, but man, Fiji's pretty good. And when you go to the other countries, like, I went and did a bit of volunteer in Vietnam, and some of the houses and the families and the conditions that they were in, and it's like, okay, I mean, like, you know, you really come back home, and then you're very grateful for what you have. And you're also grateful for the support that you have. I think a lot of people take that for granted. And when you see the sort of life that people are living back there, like, man, you need to be really, really grateful. I think for me, it was like, got to the point where even having a bed, you know, or even having a proper shower. Like, I think that's just some of the things that I take back from the experiences and traveling.
Even you mentioned before, obviously working hard, but you find yourself working a lot smarter, as per harder. But you also travel smarter too. You were sharing with me before. It's not all just you know, getting to a special location and then everyone just sees you traveling, but there's actually a lot of, you know, there's a fair bit of planning going in, you know. Just elaborate a little bit more on that, like.
Yeah, so I think a lot of the questions I always get from people is like, how much money do you spend? How much money do you need to save to go to these countries? And I'm like, well, it really depends on the type of traveler you are, right? I've always been the low budget traveler. And I did, so when I did the South America trip, I did Chile, Peru, and then winged Argentina. And then, just those three countries. But I think the amount of money that I spent, or the most expensive thing that I bought was obviously the airline, the tickets. But otherwise, like I did things like I'm not sure if people have heard of it, couch surfing. If you don't, you can Google it. It's a pretty big thing in travel.
Surfing the couch.
Couch surfing, yeah. And there's also volunteering. So what I did as well was I worked for accommodation. So in Peru, the hostel that I stayed in, I volunteered at the front desk. So they were looking for travelers who spoke English, right? So all you need to do is man the front desk, check people in, and they give you free accommodation and free breakfast. So a lot of people, like even my friends, are like, "Oh man, CFO, like why are you doing that?" And I was like, "Why not? Like people are always like
meeting people too at the same time.
Oh man, that's the best part. You go in and that's the thing. Like I work from 5 a.m. to 10 a.m. and then I have entirely the whole day to do whatever I want. And that's another smarter way of traveling. Like a lot of people just think like, oh, you travel, you go to these bougie ass hotels, eat at these fancy restaurants. But traveling is not all about that. Like it's also about the experiences and the people that you meet. And I think for me it was like, that's always going to be the best part of my travels is the people that I meet.
Yep.
And I think, we were discussing before, like, man, the people that you meet all over the world and sharing their story and their travels, and you just get inspired and you be like, man, I want to do that too. Because, like, I was sharing with Pastor P earlier. I was saying, like, because I was telling my sister, like, yo, you need to travel as well. But she's the type, like, because we being Fijians and islanders, no one wants to travel on their own, right? They're too scared. And also not because of that. Your parents are like, no, you can't go to the country on your own. It's too dangerous. This and that. So, I was telling people, like, but I meet people I was one of the oldest ones in the group. Like, they were asking me, like, how old are you? And I was like, 29. They're like, oh.
Where's your wheelchair?
I was like, wait, why? How old are you? They're like, 21, 22. And I was like, oh, damn. Where'd you get the money from? What's the thing you ask? Because, like, and you're thinking, like, damn, for us Fijians and everything, like, damn, we have to work hard and struggle to even travel, right? But it's all about saving up that money and trying to, and for me it was like, for me it was like, look, when I traveled and stayed in these places for free, it's not because I couldn't afford to travel. It's for me, it's like, why do I then need to spend so much money on a room when there's this opportunity that I can also to look to do and spend less money? And that's basically what I did. And I think it was the experience out of all of it that's, that's the best part of traveling.
Wow. Bro, you're dropping bombs there, man.
Oh, man.
So I think it's the mindset. It comes down to the way that you want to perceive, Some people would say, oh, why would I go on a holiday to work? But you've pretty much just hit a nail on the head there, man.
Oh, man. Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, I encourage a lot of, I keep telling even my group of friends, like, oh, you need to travel more. You literally need to travel more. And I see Villy and I see all your videos as well. And it's like, yeah, people need to see that. Like, I don't know, you just get this different feeling of satisfaction when you travel. And it's not about just, going and doing the must-do things as a tourist, the touristy stuff. Yeah, man, I stay away from that. I stay away from that. Like, I'll do the ones that I feel like I need to do, that I've always wanted to do. I mentioned, like, Machu Picchu. Like, that was, for me, Machu Picchu was like, all of my friends always knew that. I always talked about Machu Picchu. It was the wallpaper on my phone. I kept telling myself, I'm going to go there one day. I'm going to go there one day. And for me, the highlight was standing up there. I was just like, yo, I made it. I made it up to Machu Picchu, man. So it was just a satisfaction in itself. And then, I was chatting to a couple of people as well about my trip after that. Because I went up on top of Machu Picchu and I put up my flag, and I was the Fiji flag. And then I got them to take photos. And then later on, I was chatting to one of my friends. They were like, oh, did you know that you can't take your flag up there? I was like, oh, really? They're like, yeah, you can't like go take a photo with your flag. I was like, oh, jokes? Right? Nobody told me. But yeah, I mean, like, look, it's all part of the experience. And for me, I was just like, getting up there with that flag was just like, oh, man. I was just like, I've made it up here. But, man.
It's mad because, like, you taking the flag up, and also Fred. I know Fred does that. I know Fred when he goes traveling. Shout out to Fred Raulu. He takes his flag with him. It's just
good
natural,
on Fred. Yeah, exactly. Like, you're just so proud to take your flag. But I think when I was taking a photo, one of the ladies was like, what flag is that? And I was like, oh, Fiji.
Where have you been? What rock are you under?
She goes like, oh, cause I see the Union Jack, like, and I was like, oh yeah, so we were colonized by the British, and she goes like, oh really? I thought it was by the French, and I was like, oh well, you got wrong, by the British. Okay, that's why the Union Jack is there. Yeah, I mean like, and even all throughout the entire South America trip, no one knew where Fiji was.
Oh well.
So every time I'm just like, oh yeah, it's in the middle of Australia, New Zealand, sort of like just near Australia, like you'll be able to know.
Yeah.
But
It's crazy because South America and I think the islands, they share a link. We'll go back in the days. I don't know how true this is, but for my research,
we're from Argentina.
I heard that they found lapita pottery and all that in South America, and potatoes they find in Fiji. But potatoes are not native to Fiji.
Oh,
So
wow.
how it's native to like South America. Or if I'm talking out of my own.
Maybe Fiji history.
Maybe
Our brother
Fiji
there
history.
can, yeah, Fiji, help us out.
So yeah, I heard somewhere along the line, someone went on a boat there,
Stole the
Dropped
potato.
stole the potato, dropped off the lapita, and then came back to the islands. So I don't know how true that is, but that's just
Well-
that's a really key drop in some science.
Wow. So you didn't jig that class.
History.
Wow.
Where else do you want to go? You want to talk about the 12 tribes of Israel? You want to talk about the river now?
Oh, wow.
Good one, good
Tutankhamun.
So where to next? Where's West traveling to next? Once his border open.
That's the big question, like
Yeah.
COVID has changed a lot of things for everyone.
Yeah.
I guess I had my eyes set for Europe next year, 2021, but I guess that's off the bucket list.
Mm.
We keep saying we're going to do a trip together, but you just
I
never come
know,
on.
man. Like, really, I think you were there. You came to pick me up when I got back from
Bali.
right? Oh, man, that was crazy. And then we've always talked about, like, we need to travel together. And it was his birthday.
Yeah, they're
And
like,
then I was like, wait, I couldn't
No.
make it. Yeah,
couldn't
I
make
think
it.
I was in Japan or something, yeah.
you're on your business trips. Your business is worth more than my friendship.
Yo, I know, right?
Just another
Chasing the
meeting.
money, yes, the money.
Next time you go work at that hostel, like, don't give that guy free accommodation. He's probably got more money than the whole hostel.
Actually, the Japanese company that he's working for, now you've heard it, he'll work at the...
For free.
He'll work there.
Man. Yeah, but like, I think the trips that I do keep me sane, and I keep telling that to my parents. My parents never understand because every time I tell them where to go, like I think when I told my parents I was going to Bali, my mom's like, "Oh, you have to like ziplock your bag, like put the wrapping on and everything." I was like, "Why?" Because they're gonna slip drugs inside. I was like, "Oh man." Like, it just goes to a whole another level of crazy. So I think, so what I did was I stopped telling my parents where I traveled to. Shout out to my mom and dad. I just stopped telling them because my mom would worry senseless about this and that. Because as soon as when I told her that I was going to Bali, she started sending me this link, about I think there's an Australian that got
Don't go surfing.
They got
Don't take it simple.
he got robbed or something, or stabbed or something in Bali. And I was like, yo, mom, that can happen anywhere in the world. Like, like just calm down. But and I think if people sort of see traveling, like if they have a passion for travel, man, you need to do it. And that's the thing as well. Like, I think a lot of people are more worried about money. Well, like I said, there's other ways to travel. Like, and I think for me, I started out couch surfing. So, like I said, search up couch surfing. Like it's a different experience.
You heard it first, CFO couch surfing.
I know, right? Yeah. Everyone's like, how can you go couch surfing? Because you CFO. It's like, man, CFO is a title. That's
put the fire.
I was like, that doesn't mean I can't do anything else. Like, but
Doesn't mean I have to live up. It doesn't mean I have to go stay in hotels all the time.
I don't think I've ever stayed in a bougie hotel. Like, to be honest. Like,
Why are you calling everyone else bougie?
Oh, because I mean, if they want to stay there, that's fine. But it's just not me. It's just not me. I live for the experiences, and that's one of the things that hostels or backpacking sort of takes me. Because then, I mean, staying in your hotel by yourself, because I'm always a solo traveler, right? Most of the times.
Hopefully not
in the future. But anyways,
Maybe
But-
someone else to accompany.
Ah, that'd be nice.
Wink.
That'd be nice. But like search for ways of traveling, and reach out to people that have traveled. Like they probably will give you tips. And I think when I did Machu Picchu, I posted on, apparently there's a page called Fijians Who Travel on Facebook. Yeah. And so I just posted up and said like, oh, has anyone been to this place? Like, what are your tips? And people just start throwing it there. And you're like, oh, there's so many people that have actually been there.
Mad.
So, that's the thing. Like, you just get all these ideas because everyone's like, because with Machu Picchu, in Cusco in itself, like the elevation is, I think, 3,500 meters above sea level. That's pretty high. And altitude sickness is real. It's pretty real. Like, if you think that you're fit, go up to 3,500 and you're like huffing and puffing. Like, because we had a guy that was in our hostel as well. Like, he's done Mount Everest.
Wow.
And he was in a group as well. So even when we were going up Machu Picchu, like he was saying, like, I've done Everest, but you still need to acclimatize yourself. Like, you can never be like you can never get used to it. But you see the people there, they're like, it's so normal. And they give you to get acclimatized, they give you cocoa tea. Cocoa tea leaf, and then you just drink it, and it's supposedly you're supposed to get acclimatized to it.
You must have been just drinking Milo.
I know. They probably be like, yo, it's all in the head. It's all in the head.
Take this.
But that's the thing, like, they told me like, take cocoa tea, and I was like, what's that? That's like, so they gave it to me, and I took it, and I was like, you sure this is gonna work? But man, the climb was just like, I was like, no, these guys are probably lying to me, man. It's all in the head. But I made it up then. To me, I was just like, man, that's like I said, like everyone needs to measure success in their own way. And to me, that was one little success. And you need to celebrate all your little victories. And for me, tick, that was a victory for me. That was just a tick in the box on my bucket list. Done Machu Picchu. And where to from there. Because I think and a lot of people see on my Instagram a lot of all this traveling, right? No one sees like the back end of work that has to go and that's the thing as well. A lot of people will share our nice success stories, but we don't want to talk about our failures. Yeah, and I think I was watching a video the other day as well about failure, because people were saying like, it's what you need to do after you fail. That's the important thing. Like, no matter how much you fail, it's important what you do after that. What then? After getting a no, and a lot of people, like, everyone's talking about, I want to do this, I want to do that, but they don't want to do it by failing. And I think failing is part of life, right? And I think, I don't know if you saw a video that Esala had put up.
Yeah.
Shout out to Esala for his
Shout out to
video.
Esala. What's his job title?
Esala?
Yeah.
Oh, he's the head of internal audit. Head of internal audit.
FRA.
Yeah.
Wow.
FRA, yeah. So
Shout out to Esala. Keep those videos coming.
Yeah,
Spread a bit of positivity.
Yeah, boy.
quite inspiring. I mean, and that's the thing as well. Like, everyone sees that, you have a degree and everything, but they never see that we flunked some units, man. And uni, like, and everyone keeps everyone in uni, like, because they was asking us, because we were the party people in uni.
Oh, makes sense.
I was
We were-
studying
so that's
when
how you
guys
met
were partying.
Oh, right. Makes sense.
Hey,
know,
these
and
guys are on
that's-
scholarships.
Yeah, we were all on
And
scholarships.
they
You
all
know?
got the money. And like, so did your scholarship money come through?
Yeah, that was the question everyone's asking themselves. But everyone used to meet at the old place, meeting place, like O'Reilly's or Traps on Fridays and the weekends. But everyone's like, and I keep telling everyone, so like, oh, you need to study, and I'm like, yo, we come here for purposes. You come here for a purpose. We come here for purposes. but that's how we did it. We partied hard when it was the right time. At least we thought it was. But man, we failed units as well. But then for us, it was like, it wasn't going to be the end of it. I remember getting my result. I was back in New Zealand at that time, and then I didn't know how to tell my parents, because I was like, oh, damn, I failed one unit. So how am I going to tell my parents? I said, typical Fijian parents, Oh, man, it was hard. And it got to a point where I just thought to myself, oh, maybe if I just tell my parents, I'll just drop out of school. Like, drop out of uni and maybe take a gap year off. But I was lucky that when I told my parents, they were just like, oh, you know what? Like, just what can you do? There's a question like, what
What's
can you do
done.
now? Yeah, you can't change it. And so for me, it was like, okay, I need to get it back. Like I need to do it. And when I was in New Zealand at that time, like uni had already started, and so I was just thinking to myself, like, oh man, I don't feel like going back. Like everyone's gonna know, like I won't be in the same classes as everyone else because everyone's going on to the second level, and I flunked the unit that is supposed to be a prerequisite for the second year.
Oh, bro.
So everyone, and when I went back to Fiji, like I could only take 2 units because that unit, apparently the unit that I failed, and I didn't know much about it. Like I was just winging uni as well. I didn't know much about like, oh, you had to take these certain units to progress into the next one and how important it was, right? We were just busy doing our own thing. But yeah, when I went back to Fiji, like I didn't realize how much it got to me until like, you know, all the group of friends were banding together and talking about the unit that they're doing in second year, and I was just like, I could only take 2 units. They're like, what are you doing? Oh, just 2 units. But I think that for me was like, and then when I went to my first class because I had to take the thing was that unit was only offered in the second semester. So I had to wait a whole year till I could take that unit again. So yeah, and then in second semester, when I went to my first class, I sat down, and you know the tutor was like, oh, how many of you guys read the chapters and how many of you guys did the tutorials? Like none of us put our hands up. And he goes, how many of you are sitting for this unit the second time? And it's like, oh, be honest, you know. And so this is me being honest. I put my hand up because well, maybe if you had read the book, you wouldn't be finding yourself sitting here. I was just like, oh, that's a low-key uppercut, man. I was just like, yeah, that's it. I'm never coming to this guy's class again. And that's the thing, like, but I kind of took it as like, you know, I want to prove this guy wrong. I'm going to prove this guy wrong, and I'm going to pass a unit. But I think that's the thing. Like, I think if you have the support of everyone else, and the good thing as well, like my group of friends, none of them told me like, oh, you failed a unit, or you know, you're trying to make me feel bad. But I know for me, at the back of my mind, I was just like, man, watching these people grow and everything into the second, and also in the second semester of second year of uni, like, you know, everyone's all talking about all this, and I'm just like, damn. So I waited until the second year of uni, until December, because usually every December I go back to New Zealand. And then on that second year, I told myself, like, you know what, I'm going to catch up with everyone else. So I decided to do summer school.
Oh, well.
I enrolled in, and I said, like, no, because the third year was going to be everyone's final year. I wanted to graduate with everyone else. So I took 2 units in that summer. And then when I went to the first class in summer, and when I walked into the classroom, I saw that same tutor from the previous unit standing there.
The boxer.
I was just like, what the hell? And he looks at me and goes, what are you doing here? I was like, oh, I'm taking summer. He goes like, yeah, but you've hardly come to any of the classes in semester. And the thing was, when this class starts in summer, the results aren't out. And so he tells everyone, like, well, the results aren't out yet, so you can't say that you confirm for this class yet. When the results come out, if you pass, you can stay, and if you don't, you need to leave the class. I was just like, damn it. So he goes like, so how sure are you that you're going to pass? And I was like, not sure, but I'm just going to sit here. You know? And he goes like, how many units are you enrolling in summer? And I said, 2. Like everyone that did accounting, like, to do one accounting unit in summer, it's pretty tough. To do 2, yeah, that's suicide.
Yeah,
that's like another semester.
Yeah, that's literally because they're cramming everything into like 4 weeks, a whole semester into 4 weeks, and that's just for 1 unit. So if you're doing 2, that's crazy. But I was determined. I told myself, like, I'm gonna show this guy up, man. I need to do that. And I kept telling myself as well, is when I walk into semester 1 for year 3, I want to be in the same class as all my friends. You know. And that's what I basically did. So I went, whacked 2 of and when the results came out, I remember that day very clearly, because when I went, because the lecturer was reading out the results. So he's like, oh, just give me your ID and I'll tell you if you pass or not. And if you don't, you have to leave the class. So when I went up to him, he was like, what's your ID number? So I gave him my ID number, and then he looks at me, he goes like, show me your ID card. I was just like, yo, no, ask for anyone else's. So I showed him my card. Just so for very
Black Lives Matter.
Yeah, and then he saw, because I passed it, you know. Then he was like, "Oh, okay, yeah, you passed. You can stay." And I was like, "Oh, told you so." I walked out, and then so I ended up passing those 2 units in summer, And then in third year, I walk in so like shoulders up and everything, meeting everyone in the same class. And he was like, yo, you were missing for a whole year. You weren't even in our level. How are you here now? I was like, summer, bro. I did tell him I did summer. I caught up, and I was determined to catch up because I was like, you know what? At the end of the day, when we're going to receive the paper, I'm going to be sitting right there beside you guys. But and that's basically what happened. Like, you know, our group of friends, like we just helped each other out. And then when on graduation day, everyone was there. Like if you were like, yo, you remember the time that when we walked in late to one of the classes, and obviously because at that time as well, our tutors were kind of around the same age as we were. You know, there was Glenn. So shout out to Glenn, and it was now in Canberra. Every time they see us hungover, they're like,
you guys will never graduate.
People always, but the good thing with them, like, you know, they were always very supportive of the Itoke accounting students that were going up. You know, they provided support, always trying to motivate us and tell us, like, you know what, you guys have to do it. You guys have to do it. You guys can do it. And I think that's for us was like, it was really good to have that sort of support group from your friends and also you know in your uni community as well. So I think that's the thing too. I think it's important that people surround themselves with a lot of positive vibes, positive people. I mean, there's always going to be negative Nancy out there to bring you down.
Negative Nancy.
Yeah, but you just need to have a positive mind and positive mindset, and that's basically what I did to try and, you know, because at the back of my mind I was like, I'm going to graduate with everyone else. So that was just a positivity that I had to take in. Yeah,
bro, nothing's wrong with failing. It was good, man.
Oh, man.
Perseverance.
Yeah.
Playing catch up.
Yep, and that's the thing as well. I mean, you will fail at some point in your life.
Yep.
There's no doubt about it. Everyone's going to fail at some point, you know, and in some extent and different things. It's just what you're going to do after you fail. And I think it's accepting that failure is part of life. I think that's important for people to understand. And people need, you shouldn't just see someone's success story. You need to understand the story behind it. I mean, listening to obviously all the stories that you guys have covered in your podcast, you know, and that's the stories that you hear behind the scenes, right? And that's the hard work that people put in, the grind. And I see how far you boys have come as well. I mean, in this setup, man, this neighborhood, pretty sick, dude. It's like next to the water. We're going to go canoeing one day. But yeah, man.
That's it, bro.
Yeah.
It's, and like you're saying, like surrounding yourself with the right bunch of people that are on the same journey, and like encouraging each other, not pulling each other down, sort of like pulling each other up when they need to be pulled up.
Yeah, 100%.
And like, and also as a personal note, like I'm grateful for your friendship and the boys back in Viti, and listen to you speak about it and how the boys have always been around you. And it's like, it's sort of, I'm also proud of that, because every time I come back home for visit and hang out with you guys again, it's like I also get a kick on my butt, because you guys were like, hey, Billy, man, this has to be done, this has to be done. I'm like, man, why did I even come and see these guys? Okay, man? Like, we'll drink grog, like we'll mix a bowl, and then it's just all about, okay, what's investing, like who's this, who's doing what, like, you know, let's get our game up, like, you know, and it has always been encouraging, and it's good to finally let you speak that to the people who are watching, people that might hear this and not think that accounting is just a boring job, but you know, it can be fulfilling when done the right way, man. But just on behalf of Fuel and us, just want to say thank you for coming down. Thank you for spending time.
Oh, thanks for having me, man.
We love you, bro.
We love you too, man.
Also for Mems, we'll tell her we love her too.
Yeah.
Just to put it on the record.
Yeah, we love your memes wherever you are. We love your memes.
But yeah, all the best with the work, bro, and everything that you got going planned, and hopefully God's favor and everything on your journey ahead, bro. Thanks for coming down.
You covered some deep topics with around the areas of finance and travel. Is there any words of wisdom you can offer? Any advice to the next gen coming through?
With finance and traveling or whatever?
Well, I think one of the principles that I've tried to
the principles
to get out there is you know, one of the important things is to seek discomfort. And a lot of people are always in their comfort zone because that's where they're happy, right?
Yep.
but you need to seek discomfort, and part of it is talking about or having the red table talk. You need to talk about the difficult topics, the difficult conversations. And I think that's
we can do that now if you want.
and I think for us, our culture as well, like it's a bit of a taboo.
Yeah.
But I think that's important because I think we talked about this earlier as well, because mental health, right? People need to talk about it, and you need to seek discomfort. And I think part of it is addressing the issue head on. Like I think for us, everyone's like trying to beat around the bush, before we get there. Yeah, so I think that's quite important for one. Seek discomfort, because that's where you will see yourself grow. You'll see yourself continuously challenging yourself. Because if you find yourself content with what you have and what you do, you can't see yourself growing. I think when you go outside your comfort zone, you'll see yourself expanding and being in a better headspace as well. So I think that's important. I think the other thing is just don't forget to be kind. Be human. Are you human first? Like, I think everything that you see nowadays is just about all this negativity, like out there. Like, be kind. Doesn't hurt. Doesn't cost anything, right? It's just being kind to one another. I think you need to remember that you're human first before anything else. Everything else is just titles and things like that, materialistic. You need to be human. Yeah, be kind.
Russ, you said that so kindly.
Oh, man.
What a kind way to say it.
Oh, thanks, man.
Man, hopefully all of mankind can listen.
One and only.
One of a kind of advice, that one.
Man. Obviously.
No, but that's it, bro. Thanks for coming down, man.
Let's go. Thanks.
Much
man.
love,
Thanks for
Tangani.
having me. Thanks,
Thank
boys.
you. This has been another episode with Waisale Iowane, the CFO, Chief Financial Officer, Freebird Institute.
Money.
Oh, get it.
Hopefully you guys have got some value out of this, save your money, watch your spending, travel a bit more, get out of your comfort zone, If you need any more advice on whatever you need if you need a text done, or Twice is tagged in the Instagram, follow him, and Naka, guys.
All right. Naka.
I don't lie. Ono bitu jiwa. Ono bitu jiwa. Ono bitu jiwa. Ono bitu jiwa.